In useful case of conscience, discussed and resolved, concerning associations and confederacies with idolaters, infidels, heretics, and any other known enemies to truth and godliness, by Mr. George Gillespie, late minister at Edinburgh, whereunto is subjoined a letter written by him to the commissioners of the General Assembly in the time of his sickness, together with his testimony unto this truth, written 2 days before his death. The preface. This following question and case of conscience, as it was handled and resolved by Mr. Gillespie in some sermons delivered by him about the time of contriving the late war against the kingdom of England, being much desired by many who heard of it, that it might be for public use, was at last yielded to by the author before his death. His friends have thought it necessary to publish the same, together with these testimonies, wherewith he sealed his truth, herein contained, in the time of his sickness, and immediately before his death. In useful case of conscience, discussed and resolved, concerning associations and confederacies with idolaters, infidels, heretics, or any other known enemies of truth and godliness. While I have occasion to speak of human covenants, it shall not be unprofitable to speak somewhat to that question so much debated, as well among divines as among politicians and lawyers, whether a confederacy and association with wicked men, or such as are of another religion, be lawful, yea, or not. For answer whereunto shortly, let us distinguish, number 1, civil covenants, number 2, ecclesiastical, sacred, or religious covenants, number 3, mixed covenants, partly civil, partly religious. The last two being made with wicked men, and such as differ in religion from us, I hold to be unlawful, and so do the best writers. When the Israelites are forbidden a covenant with the Canaanites, special mention is made of their gods, altars, images, in Exodus 23, verse 32, and Exodus 34, verses 13 and 14, as well as Judges 2, verse 2, that no such superstitious, unlawful worship might be tolerated. As for civil covenants, if they be for commerce or peace, which are called sportia, they are allowed according to the Scriptures, Genesis 14, verse 13, Genesis 31, verse 44, and 1 Kings 5, 12, Jeremiah 29, verse 7, and Romans 12, verse 18. Such covenants the Venetians have with the Turks because of vicinity. Such covenants also Christian emperors of old had sometimes with the pagans. It was the breach of a civil covenant of peace with the Turks that God punished so exemplarily in Uladisalus, king of Hungary. But if the civil covenant be such a covenant as the Grecians called sumaxia, to join in military expeditions together, of this is the greatest debate and controversy among writers. For my part, I hold it unlawful with divers good writers, and conceive that Exodus 34, God forbiddeth not only religious covenants with the Canaanites, but even civil covenants, verse 12, and conjugal covenants, verse 16, which is also Junius's opinion in his analysis upon that place. The reason for the unlawfulness of such confederacies are brought, number 1, from the law, Exodus 23, verse 32, as well as Exodus 34, verses 12 and 15, and Deuteronomy 7, verse 2. Yea, God maketh this a principal stipulation and condition upon their part, while he is making a covenant with them, Exodus 34, verses 10 and 12, Judges 2, verses 1 and 2. And lest it should be thought that this is meant only of these 7 nations enumerated, Deuteronomy 7, the same law is interpreted for 4 other nations, 1 Kings 11, verses 1 and 2, so that it is to be understood generally against confederacies with idolaters and those of a false religion. And the reason of the law is moral and perpetual, that is, the danger of ensnaring the people of God. Therefore they were forbidden to covenant either with their gods or with themselves, for a conjunction of counsels and familiar conversation, which are consequence of a covenant, draweth in end to a fellowship in religion. Number 2, from disallowed and condemned examples, as Asa's covenant with Ben-Hadad in 2 Chronicles 16 to verse 10, and Ahaz's covenant with the king of Assyria, 2 Kings 16 verses 7 and 10, 2 Chronicles 27 verses 16 to 23. And if it should be objected, these are but examples of covenants with idolatrous heathens, there is not the like reason to condemn confederacies and associations with wicked men of the same religion. I answer, number 1, it holds a fortiori against confederacies with such of the seed of Jacob as had made defection from true religion. For Grotius de jure Bellin and Pacius, lib 2, cap 15, number 9, noteth, God would have such to be more abominated than heathens, and to be destroyed from among their people. Deuteronomy 13, verse 13. Besides this I add, second, we have in other scriptures examples which meet with that case also. For Jehoshaphat's confederacy with Ahab, 2 Chronicles 18, verse 3, with 2 Chronicles 19, verse 2, and after with Ahaziah in 2 Chronicles 20, verse 35, are condemned, which made Jehoshaphat, although once relapsing into that sin, yet afterwards mend his fault, for he would not again join with Ahaziah when he sought that association the second time. 1 Kings 22, verse 49. So Amaziah, having associated himself in an expedition with the Israelites, when God was not with them, did upon the prophet's admonition disjoin himself from them, and take his hazard of their anger. 2 Chronicles 25, verses 7, 8, 9, and 10. Lavater upon the place, applying that example, noticeth this as one of the causes why the Christian wars with the Turks had so ill success. Why, saith he, consider what soldiers were employed. This is the fruit of associations with the wicked. Thirdly, these confederacies proceed from an evil heart of unbelief, as is manifest by the reasons which are brought against Ahaz's league with Ben-Hadad, 2 Chronicles 16, verses 7, 8, and 9, and by that which is said against the confederacy with the king of Assyria, Isaiah 8, verses 12 and 13. For, as Calvin upon the place noticeth, the unbelievers among the people, considering their own inability for managing so great a war, thought it necessary to have a confederacy with the Assyrians. But this was from faithless fears, from want of faith to stay and rest upon God as all sufficient. Fourth, if we must avoid fellowship and conversation with the sons of Belial, except where natural bonds or the necessity of a calling tieth us, Psalm 6:8, Proverbs 9:6, and Proverbs 24, verse 1, as well as 2 Corinthians 6:14 and 15, and if we should account God's enemies our enemies, Psalm 139, verse 21, then how can we join with them as confederates and associates? For by this means we have fellowship with them, and look on them as friends. Now, as to the arguments which used to be brought for the contrary opinion, first, 'tis objected that Abraham had a confederacy with Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, Genesis 14, verse 13. Abraham with Abimelech, Genesis 21, verses 27 and 32. And Isaac with Abimelech, Genesis 26. Jacob with Laban, Genesis 31, verse 44. Solomon with Hiram in 1 Kings 5:12. Answer. First, it cannot be proved that these confederates of Abraham, Isaac, and Solomon were either idolaters or wicked. Laban indeed was an idolater, but there are good interpreters who conceive that Abraham's three confederates feared God, and that Abimelech also feared God, because he speaketh reverently of God, and ascribeth to God the blessing and prosperity of those patriarchs. 'Tis presumed also that Hiram was a pious man, because of his epistle to Solomon, 2 Chronicles 2, verses 11 and 12. However, second, those confederacies were civil, either for commerce or for peace and mutual security, that they should not wrong one another, as that with Laban, Genesis 31:52, and with Abimelech, Genesis 26, verse 29. Which kind of confederacy is not controverted. 'Tis objected also that the Maccabees had a covenant with the Romans and Lacedaemonians, 1 Maccabees 8 and 12, verses 1 and 2. First, that covenant is disallowed by many good writers, yet 'tis observed from the story that they had not the better, but the worse success, nor the less, but the more trouble following it. Second, the story itself, 1 Maccabees 1, verse 12, tells us that the first notion of a confederacy with the heathen in those times proceeded from the children of Belial in Israel. Lastly, it may be objected that persons discontented and of broken fortunes were gathered to David, and that he received them and became a captain unto them, 1 Samuel 22, verse 2. Answer. Number 1. Some think, and 'tis probable, they were such as were oppressed and wronged by Saul's tyranny, and were therefore in debt and discontented, and that David in receiving them was a type of Christ, who is a refuge for the afflicted, and touched with the feeling of their infirmities. Second, whoever they were, David took care that no profane nor wicked person might be in his company, Psalm 101, yea, Psalm 34, which was penned at that same time when he departed from Achish, and became captain of those 400 men. He saith to them, Come, ye children, hearken unto me, I will teach you the fear of the Lord. Third, I shall bring a better argument from David's example against the joining with such associates in war, as are known to be malignant and wicked. Psalm 118, verse 7. The Lord taketh my part with them that help me. Therefore I shall see my desire upon mine enemies. Psalm 54, verse 4. The Lord is with them that uphold my soul. Upon this last place, both Calvin and Jesuris observe that although David's helpers were few and weak, yet God being in them and with them, his confidence was that they should prove stronger than all the wicked. He intimateth also that if he had not known that God was with his helpers, leading and inspiring them, he had looked for no help by them. 2 Chronicles 25, verses 7 and 8.